Ekabo, and welcome to another episode of Talking Ifa with me, Babalawo Salako. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about what I see as the relationship between Ifa, Ifa divination, the Ifa 4-day week, binary numbers, and computers, right? I find it interesting, so hopefully you will too. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe so that our small channel can continue to grow. With all that being said, let's talk. Greetings. I'm Babalawo Salako. I was initiated as a priest of Ifa and Obatala in Nigeria in 2006, and I've been practicing the Ifa Orisha religion for over 30 years now. My mission is simple: to help those who are new to the religion or lost in the religion. So if that's you, then buckle up and join me. This is Talking Ifa. Okay, so let's get started. Now, as you can see here, I have Ifa versus your phone, right? And you may wonder, well, why do you have a phone, image of a phone? Because your phone and our phones are also computers. This is Ifa versus computers. Computers, not just your laptop computer, not just your desktop computer, but your phone, your tablet, all of these are computers. Okay, so let's move on from there. Please support us by purchasing your copy of our Ifa Days calendar and Ifa Days planner at talkingifa.carrd.co. The link is in the description below. Ireo, adupoyo. So what I want to do first is do a baseline lesson on numbers and numbering systems before we get into the computers and how that relates to Ifa. Let's look at what I mean by number systems. So most of us today, especially here in the West, we're used to everything being in the decimal number system, the decimal number system. But we're going to look at 4 different numbering systems. There are more than these 4, but we're going to look at these 4 today. So right here, we're going to look at decimal, binary, octal, and hexadecimal. Okay, so let's go through what those are right quick. Decimal, that what we're used to, is also called a base 10 numbering system because everything is based off the number 10, right? Everything is in 10s. So, think about it. If you go 1 and you count up, and when you get to 10, then you're in the 10 spot, then you're in the 100 spot, then you're in the 1,000 spot, right? And each of those are based on the number 10, multiples of 10. Now, the other thing, and then we have binary, base 2. It's based on 2, the number 2. Base 8 is based on the number 8, and base 16 is hexadecimal. Octal is base 8, hexadecimal is base 16. Okay, so these are the 4 we're going to look at. Now, one of the things you have to realize when it comes to numbers and numbering systems are humans created symbols to represent numbers. Numbers exist. They've always existed in the universe. Math exists in the universe. But we have to have a way of describing it so that we can understand as humans what we're talking about. It's a language. So when we look at base 10, we use these symbols 0 through 9. Those are the symbols that we're used to using here in the West anyway. 0 through 9 to represent those numbers 0 through 9. These are the symbols. Remember, this symbol here for 9 is not actually the number 9. It's a symbol representing the number 9. Okay? And that'll make more sense in a few minutes. Binary, base 2. It uses only 2 symbols, 0 and 1. These are the 2 symbols to represent all numbers in binary. Octal, base 8. It only uses the digits 0 through 7, the same exact digits as in decimal, except it stops at 7, right? Hexadecimal, base 16, uses all 9 of these symbols, and then it jumps up to these symbols, and it uses letters to represent the numbers. These are just symbols representing the actual numbers, okay? Now, let's look at this here. This is just, I'm going to go through a better example of this in a few minutes, but let's just look at this here. If we're counting numbers here, let's look at how these are represented. Decimal, we're used to 0 through 9, and 9 represents the end of the cycle. Once 9, you reach 9, then you start repeating and you start over. You start over at 0, but you put a 1 in front of it. And then you go up through 9, and then you get to 9, say 19. Then you go and you put a 2 in front of it, and it becomes 20, 20, 21, etc. Binary only uses 2 symbols to represent all the numbers. So we have 0, then 1. Then when we get to the number 2, it's represented by the symbols 1, 0. This is still the number 2, but it's represented by these 2 symbols, 1, 0. 1, 1 represents the number 3, etc. Octal. Octal, you go up the same digits here, but we end at 7. 7 is the end of the cycle here. Then we start at 1, 0 for the number 8. Hexadecimal, we go all the way down, and I have to show you that in a minute. Another thing of how that, just quickly, how that relates to Ifa. Think about an Ifa. A lot of times, a lot of people say that the number 9 represents the ancestors. Why? Because they say the number 9 represents the end of a cycle. Here, you count up to 9, then you start over. So the ancestors represent the end of the life cycle. So you say the ancestors, we say 9. Well, a lot of people do. But that's because you're counting in the decimal system. In the binary system, 1 represents the end of a cycle. So if you were in binary, 1 would represent the ancestors. If you're in octal, 7 represents the end of a cycle. So if you're in the octal system, 7 would represent the ancestors, right? So it all depends on the numbering system that you're using. So let's look at this, and I'm just going to go through and show you counting all the way to the number 16, how it goes across here and the differences. So we had 0, they're all the same. We get to 1, they're all the same. Now 2, it changes, because in binary, 2 is represented by 1, 0. The rest are the same. 3 is 1, 1 in binary. The rest are all the same symbol. Now 4, they all use the same symbol except binary. 4 is 1, 0, 0. That represents 4 in binary. Of course, in decimal, that represents 100. But in binary, it represents the number 4. Okay, then we go up to 5, and let's keep going on out. We get to 7. Remember, 7 is the end of the cycle in octal. So when we go to 8, in octal, 1, 0 represents 8. In binary, 8 is 1, 0, 0, 0, which would be, in decimal, this would be 1,000. But in binary, it represents the number 8. So now, let's look at what happens when we get in hex. So when we get to hex, 9, it changes from there. We have to start using other symbols in hex. So what did they decide to use? Letters. So when we go to the number 10 in hex, is the letter A. Letter A represents the number 10 in hex. 12, 1, 2 symbols represent 10, the number 10 in octal. 1, 0, 1, 0 represents the number 10 in binary. Now, if we keep going in hex, B is 11, C, 12. Now, when we get to 15, F represents the end of the symbols in hex. So when we get to the number 16, what do you think it's going to be? Let's see. 1, 0. Okay. So the interesting thing about that number 1, 0 is in different numbering systems, these two symbols, 1, 0, represent different numbers, actual numbers. So again, in decimal, which is a base 10 number, the symbol 10 here represents the number 10. So if we're talking about pizza, how many slices of pizza do you want? If you put 10, that's saying I want 10 slices of pizza. But in binary, the symbol 10, if you put that down and said I want 10 slices of pizza, in binary you would only get 2 slices of pizza because that represents the number 2, not the number 10. In octal, base 8, that 10, if you put that down and you were doing octal, and you say I want this many slices of pizza, you're saying you want 8 slices of pizza for this symbol 10. And in hexadecimal, if you use the symbol 10, you're saying you want 16 slices of pizza. Okay? So in different numbering systems, the same 2 symbols represent different things. We're used to decimal, so when we see this number 10, we say that is 10. That's what it means, 10. So if we say this symbol, everybody knows I want 10 of something. I need 10 slices of pizza or whatever. In other numbering systems, that same 2 symbols represents a totally different number. Okay? Just as another aside, interesting fact, in hexadecimal numbers, we actually use them all the time. One of the areas that they're used is in colors. So for instance, if you wanted to go to and order a new car and you had a specific, your favorite color, and you wanted your car painted that color, if you found out the hex code number for that color, you could get the exact paint color you want. Here, as you can see, there's a color picker. This is just going out on the internet. You can just type in hex color picker and you can find different ones, but particularly this one, if you look here where it says hex, you can see it better here. Hex, this is the hex code for this color of blue right here. If I change to green, this hex code changes 07F059. Remember, hex goes from 0 to 9 and then A, B, C, D, E, F. So all those symbols are used to represent a particular number. Here, they can be used to represent a particular color. Red. Here, this color, or orange, is F05107. Come over to here, yellow, F0C107. So if you copied this hex code, then you could go and get this exact color. If you want to go to Home Depot and say, I want a certain color of paint, I want this color paint, this is the hex code, okay? So you could go out and this is just simply a hexadecimal number. That's all it is. So now let's get to the good stuff. Let's start comparing binary numbers to computing and then bring in how that ties into E5. So just bear with me a minute, we're going to get there, okay? So binary numbers and computing, right? One thing to know is that how does this relate, these binary numbers relate to computing? Well, computers all use binary numbers. Why? Well, all computers are created with electronic circuits. And when I say computers, again, I don't just mean your desktop or your laptop computer. I mean your phone, your tablet, they're also computers, okay? So what happened when they first built electronic systems and computers? They built them on electronic circuits. All electronic circuits are based on only 2 states, high or low voltage, on or off, true or false, okay? So basically 0 or 1. 0 can represent off, 1 on. It's like a light switch. A light switch is either on or off. Those are the 2 states. Unless you have, you go in between, but for the most part, on or off. That's how all electronic circuits work. So therefore, when they designed and built computers using electronic circuits, everything on the computer had to operate on a binary system. So what happens is, to represent the states, they use binary numbers. So all manufacturers of computers create their own unfortunately, they create their own machine language, which is a binary code. It's all zeros and ones. IBM has their own, Dell has their own, right? Everybody has their own, that's slightly different from the others, but it's all based on binary numbers, 0 and 1, okay? So that's how binary numbers are related to computers. Everything in a computer operates on binary numbers. So how does that relate to IFA? Okay, so let's get into how that relates to IFA. IFA, we all know, number of IFA is 16. That's IFA's number that represents, IFA is the number 16, right? So let's look at what we mean by a binary number system. Binary numbers, when you go through the system, they're based on the number 2. So we have 2 to the 0 power is 1 equals 1. 2 to the first power, 2 times 1 is 2. Now when we have 2 times 2 squared, or 2 to the second power, or 2 squared is 2 times 2 is 4. And then 2 cubed, or 2 to the third power, is 8. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 8 to the fourth power is 16. 2 times 16 to the fifth power is 32. 2 times 16 is 32. 2 times 32 is 64. 2 times 64 is 128. 2 times 128 is 256. So let's go back and how is that relating to IFA? Think about IFA. IFA's number is 16. The primary Holy Odu is 16. There's 16 primary Odu. Ogbe, Oyeku, Iwori, Odi, Irosun, Warren, Abaro, Kanran, Ogundo, Osa, Ika, Oturopon, Otura, Irete, Oshe, Ofun. Those are the primary 16 Odu. Now when we put those together in pairs of 2, we have Ijiogbe, Oyeku Meiji, Iwori Meiji, Odi Meiji, Irosun Meiji, etc. The Meijis. How many of those are there? Aha, there just happen to be 256, right? So all of that, again, is binary, is base 2. Again, I'm going to go through that again. You have 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256, right? So IFA is totally a binary system, right? Now, another thing, when you talk about computers and you think about binary, we all, when we're buying phones or computers, you'll see there's storage units on there normally. And if you notice, it'll normally say how much RAM you have. You have 4 gigabytes of RAM, or you have 8 gigabytes, or 16, or 32, or 64, or 128, right? Even 256. Again, why? Because it's all based on binary. So if you look at this chart here, a lot of times on the left you see decimal, on the right binary. So what they call one circuit or bit in a computer is called a bit. A byte, B-Y-T-E, is 8 bits, okay? Then you go up from there. Now, if you see a kilobyte, you've heard of KB or kilobyte. Now, they might put that a kilobyte is 1,000 bytes, but that's not true. They'll say that just because we're used to a decimal numbering system. So it'll say 1,000 bytes or 1,000 kilobytes or 1,000 megabytes, or your system has 1,000 gigabytes or whatever, 1,000 terabytes. 1,000 gigabytes is a terabyte. But in reality, that's not actually what the storage amount is. Over here on the right is what it is. So if it says 1,000 bytes, that's really 1,024 bytes. 1,000 kilobytes is really 1,024 kilobytes. 1,000 megabytes is really 1,024 megabytes. Why? Because that's how it calculates out in binary. And it is a binary system. Now let's get back to IFA. I want to also relate the 4-day Ifa week to this whole binary thing. Now, this is my opinion, so let's go with it. Now, the traditional Yoruba week is a 4-day week, right? You have Ojo Ose, Obatala's Day, Ojo Ogun, which is Ogun's Day, Ojo Ajakuta, Shango Day, and Ojo Awo, or here they say Ojo Orumula, which is Ifa Orumula's Day, right? So it's 4 days. Now, we just talked about binary numbers. Binary numbers, base 2 numbers, you have 0, right? You have 2, then 4. 4 is 2 squared, 2 to the second power. So the 4-day week, that Ifa falls into the binary system. So let's try to tie this all together. Let's look at this Odu of Ogunda Meiji, right? One of the 256, and it's one of the primary 16 Odu. Ifa Lolo ni, Ifa Lolo la, Ifa Lolo tun la, Puelue, Orumila lo ni jo, Merin, O Shadasi le aye. Adifa fon Orumila. So let's translate that. What does that say? Ifa is the master of today. Ifa is the master of tomorrow. Ifa is the master of the day after tomorrow as well. Orumila is the master of all the 4 days of the week established here on earth by the divinities. Okay? So in this Odu, it establishes clearly that the 4-day Yoruba week is owned by Ifa, Ifa Orumila. Okay? And that makes sense. So to me, because it is owned by Ifa, Ifa is binary, totally a binary system. It makes sense that the week would fall within a binary system number, and the 4-day Ifa week, it fits perfectly into that. So in my opinion, Ifa is binary, just like computers. That's how Ifa is related to computers. That's how Ifa divination is related to computers. That's how the Ifa 4-day week is related to computers and related to binary numbers. Okay? Now, I hope you found that interesting. So if you want to do some of your own research, there's a lot of other research out here. It's not just something I came up with off the top of my head. There's a lot of research being done comparing Ifa to computing. So here are some of the research papers I came across. Here's one called Ifa Divination System and Artistic Expression of Yoruba Knowledge Creation. Another one, Adoption of Ifa as a Computer-Based Information System. Another one, Algebraic Characterization of Ifa Main Divination Codes. Fourth one, A Comparative Study of Ifa Divination and Computer Science. This one was done in 2013. This third one here was 2023. Then we can go into other stuff related to binary anthropology of Ifa, a study of traditional, etc., history. There's a bunch of them here. So if you want to go do some of your own research on the relationship between computers and Ifa, you can. But in my humble opinion, it all boils down to the connection with binary numbers, right? Now, there are some people, read a paper the other day where they were trying to say that that computers were created from Ifa. So they were implying, if you say that the people who created computers first went and studied Ifa and they copied Ifa and created computers. Now, I have not been convinced of that. I can't go that far. And the reason why is because if you're going to go make that argument, you also have to say that all electronics and electronic circuits was first studied Ifa and then they created the circuits. I can't see that being the case. So they created the circuits and the circuits logically would have two states, on and off, right? So therefore, all computers were based on that on and off, those two states, which happen to fit perfectly into binary, which is only 0, 1 and has two states. So in my opinion, it's more of a coincidence that they both use binary. But I'm not saying, I haven't done that thorough research on it. I don't know if people who invented computers, if they really studied IFA or not. That's not something I know. But at this point in time, I'm not convinced of that. But I do know that they both are on binary systems. They're both related based on binary systems in that way. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking Ifa with me, Babalawo Salako. And I hope you join me on upcoming episodes, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe so our channel can continue to grow. And everybody be blessed. Odabo, Irio, Irio, Irio.